I stared at the empty drawer, my fingers trembled as I yanked it open again, hoping, no, praying that my eyes had deceived me. But the truth sat there, as hollow as the space where my savings used to be, gone, every last dollar. My stomach twisted, my knees threatened to buckle, but I braced myself against the dresser. My pulse pounded in my ears. I turned toward the nightstand, yanked it open, rifling through the neatly folded envelopes where I had carefully tucked away thousands of dollars over the past 3 years. Emergency money, my escape plan, my safety net. All of it vanished. My name is Maya, and at 27, I have just been stripped of everything I built for myself. My savings, gone. My marriage, destroyed. My dignity, Farah thinks she's taken that too. But while she's probably sitting in the kitchen, sipping her tea, picturing me crumbling under the weight of her betrayal, I'm not crying. I'm not begging. I'm not broken. She stole from me. She humiliated me. She thinks she's won. But what she doesn't know is that I don't break, I retaliate. I stumble to my closet, yanking clothes off their hangers, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. My passport, my bank statements, the legal documents I had hidden away, all gone. A chill crept up my spine, slow and suffocating. I already knew who had done this. I just didn't want to believe it. Behind me, the bedroom door creaked open. Looking for something? Her voice, that voice, was laced with amusement, dripping with condescension. I turned around, my chest heaving, and there she stood in the doorway. Farah, my mother-in-law, my living nightmare. She held a cup of tea, her rings clinking softly against the porcelain, calm, unbothered, like she hadn't just stolen everything from me. She took a slow sip, watching me like a snake watching its prey struggle. Then she smiled, that smug, knowing smile. You're so careless, Maya. A wife should be more responsible with her husband's money. I clenched my fists. My husband's money? That was mine. Money I earned. Money I saved. Money that had nothing to do with him. Where is it? My voice was low, controlled, dangerously so. Farah exhaled through her nose, as if this entire conversation was beneath her. Somewhere safe, where it belongs. My vision blurred with rage. Where it belongs? No. No. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I tried to push past her, but she stepped into the room, closing the door behind her with an infuriating click. You should be grateful, she continued, her tone almost sweet. You've had your fun playing independent, but it's time to accept reality. Money in this house isn't just yours, it belongs to the family. And you're not family anymore. The words hit like a slap. Excuse me? She sighed dramatically, placing her tea down on my nightstand. Amir has finally come to his senses. He's filing for divorce. He'll be remarrying soon, a proper girl, one who understands her place. Something inside me snapped. You think you can just take everything from me? I hissed, my hands trembling. My money? My marriage? My entire life? Farah tilted her head, feigning innocence. Oh, Maya, dear, what life? She gestured toward the closet and my breath caught. It was empty. My clothes, my shoes, everything I owned, gone. I shoved past her, bolting down the hallway. My heart hammered in my chest as I reached the living room and froze. Amir stood near the front door, stiff, eyes downcast. A suitcase sat beside him. Not mine, his. And beside him, standing demurely with her hands folded in front of her, was a girl I had never seen before. Younger, dressed in traditional clothing, head bowed like the perfect, obedient wife-to-be. My stomach twisted. Amir? My voice barely came out. He looked up at me. There was something in his eyes, something resembling guilt. But it wasn't enough, not nearly enough. I'm sorry, Maya, he said softly. This is what's best. My throat tightened. Best? My entire life had just burned to the ground, and he thought this was what's best? Farah's voice sliced through the silence. You should leave while you still have dignity, Maya. I turned back to her, hands shaking, rage burning through my veins. You did this, she smiled. I saved him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear this house apart. I wanted to break something, everything, but then something unexpected happened. I stopped. I exhaled, slow and deliberate, and let the anger settle, not into blind fury, but into something colder, sharper. Farah mistook my silence for surrender. She chuckled, turning back toward the kitchen. Finally learning when to keep your mouth shut. Good girl. Amir reached for the suitcase. His new fiancée didn't move, and I smiled. Because Farah had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She thought she had won. She thought she had crushed me. But she forgot one thing. I don't lose. You would think betrayal this severe would leave me shattered, that I would be on the floor sobbing, pleading for an explanation, that I would scream, demand justice, ask why. But I didn't. I walked back into my bedroom, my former bedroom, and closed the door behind me. I stood there, staring at the empty closet, the ransacked drawers, the stripped bed, the echoing hollowness of it all. And for the first time in my life, I felt something liberating. There was no more hope, no more what ifs, no more illusions that this marriage, this family was salvageable. I had lost everything, and that meant I had nothing left to fear. I sat down on the edge of the mattress, my hands resting on my lap. My breathing was steady, calculated, not calm, controlled. For years I had played nice, I had swallowed insults, I had excused cruelty, I had bent and bent and bent until there was nothing left of me but a shadow of the woman I once was. But they had underestimated something. They thought breaking me would make me disappear. They didn't realize it would make me dangerous. I didn't cry, I didn't shake. I didn't let the rage consume me. No, I let it sharpen me. They wanted me gone? Fine. But I wouldn't go quietly. Farah thought she was untouchable, a woman revered in her community, respected by her family, worshipped by her spineless son. She controlled everything. But everyone has weaknesses. I spent years in this house, years watching, listening, observing. And now, every conversation, every whispered phone call, every dark little secret I had once ignored started clicking into place. Farah was meticulous, but she wasn't flawless. She had blind spots. And I knew exactly where to start. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked into the adjoining bathroom. I turned on the faucet, letting the water run, not because I needed it, but because I knew Farah had ears everywhere. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I smiled, because I was about to burn her entire world to the ground. Farah had been bleeding this family dry for years. Amir didn't know. Of course, he didn't. He never questioned his mother. But I had access to our financial records, our joint accounts, the family's investments. And I knew that while Farah pretended to be a woman of tradition and virtue, she had a secret addiction to control. And control required money. I had suspected it before. Small inconsistencies in our accounts, missing funds, unexplained transactions. But now I would find proof. I logged into my online banking account, navigating through the joint statements, and there it was. Tens of thousands of dollars, siphoned off over the years. Redirected to an undisclosed personal investment, I clicked through, following the money, one of her relatives' businesses, a business barely staying afloat. Farah wasn't just stealing, she was drowning in debt. And when I was done, I'd make sure she sank. Farah had always been careful to keep her hands clean. She never left a paper trail, never put her name on anything suspicious. But people like her, they talk. And I had years of conversations recorded in my mind, like the time she bragged to her sister about hiding money from the tax authorities, or the time she casually mentioned how she got rid of an ex-daughter-in-law by fabricating a scandal so bad the woman had to leave the country. I had no proof yet, but I knew where to look. Her laptop. Farah wasn't tech savvy. She still used the same weak-ass password she used for everything. Amir's birthday. Pathetic. I reached for my phone, took a deep breath, and logged into her personal email. The things I found? Devastating. Loan applications under fake business names, fraudulent tax filings, emails pressuring a cousin to lie about financial statements. And the best one, a message to her attorney, setting up a secret overseas account. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around the phone. Farah thought she had stolen everything from me. She had no idea what I was about to steal from her. Amir, the man who had stood there, suitcase in hand, watching my world collapse. I could destroy him in a dozen different ways, but I didn't want him to just suffer. I wanted him to realize too late what he had lost. So I played the long game. I still had access to his accounts, his messages, his work emails. And, oh, how convenient, he had been messaging a coworker. Nothing incriminating yet, but I had seen enough to know where it was going. Farah thought she had secured him the perfect marriage, the obedient little wife. But I would make sure she never even made it to the altar. By the time I closed my laptop, my plan was clear. The financial evidence, I would tip off the authorities, quietly, legally, make sure Farah was too busy dealing with fraud charges to notice me slipping away, the personal destruction. I would make sure her reputation crumbled. Every skeleton in her closet exposed, the psychological warfare. I would take my time, let her feel safe, let her think she had won, and then I would strike. I had nothing left to lose, and that made me the most dangerous woman she had ever crossed. I walked back into the bedroom. The walls felt smaller now, suffocating. This wasn't my home anymore, and that was fine, because I wasn't just leaving. I was burning this place to the ground. I smoothed out the sheets, took one last look around, and turned off the light. Then, without a single glance back, I walked out of the room. Tomorrow the war would begin, and I was going to win. Farah was glowing. I watched her from across the room, perched like a queen on her throne, basking in the aftermath of her so-called victory. She had the audacity to sit there, laughing, sipping her chai, surrounded by relatives who hung on to her every word like she was some kind of matriarchal deity. And why wouldn't she? In her mind, she had won. She had stolen my money. She had thrown me out of my own marriage. She had chosen a new, younger, more obedient bride for her precious son. And now she was holding court, relishing the attention, telling everyone how she had restored order to her family. It was disgusting. I tightened my grip around my glass, forcing my face into an expression of indifference. I wasn't here to fight. Not yet. Not until the knife was deep enough that she would never see it coming. For now, I let her gloat, let her think she had won. Because the higher she climbed, the harder she was going to fall. The engagement party was extravagant, exactly what I expected from Farah. Gold-lined plates, expensive floral arrangements, servers floating through the crowd offering imported sweets, all of it paid for with stolen money. The air buzzed with chatter, laughter, the occasional forced sob from an emotional auntie. Every few minutes, someone would throw a sympathetic glance my way, the discarded wife, the failure, the lesson in what happens when you don't conform. I let them look. I let them pity me. Because soon enough, they wouldn't be able to look at her the same way again. From my corner of the room, I could hear Farah's voice, louder than necessary, dripping with arrogance. It was difficult, of course, she was saying, shaking her head dramatically. But in the end, Amir knew what was best. A real man must make difficult choices for his family. A real man? I nearly laughed. Amir was a puppet, a spineless excuse for a husband who had let his mother orchestrate every aspect of his life, and here he was, sitting beside his new fiancée, a girl barely out of her teens, silent, obedient, completely oblivious to the storm that was coming. Good. Let them enjoy their little fantasy while it lasted. I took a slow sip of my drink, feeling the satisfying buzz of my phone vibrating in my bag. Right on time, I moved toward the table where the elders were gathered, keeping my steps slow, deliberate. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm, sweet, almost pleasant. Farah barely glanced at me. "Maya, dear," she drawled, "you look well. I'm surprised you decided to attend. It must be difficult for you." I smiled. "Oh, not at all. I wouldn't miss this for the world." She lifted an eyebrow, amused, condescending. "Of course you wouldn't. After all, it's not every day you get to see what a real marriage looks like." The table chuckled. I pretended not to hear it. Let them laugh, let them enjoy it. "By the way," I continued, feigning curiosity, "is Amir's business doing all right? I heard there were some financial irregularities?" The smile on Farah's face twitched, just slightly, but I caught it. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice a touch sharper now. I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough that the nearby guests had to lean in too, make them curious, make them listen. Oh, it's probably nothing, I murmured. I just got a strange call from a bank earlier today, something about missing funds, unauthorized transactions, an offshore account. But I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. The tension at the table shifted instantly. Murmurs rippled through the group. Eyes turned toward Farah. She laughed, too loud, too forced. Maya, darling, you've always been so dramatic. I'm sure you misunderstood. I shrugged, pretending to be unbothered. Of course. But you know, these things always have a way of coming to light. Banks can be so persistent about fraud cases. And then the second vibration. I glanced at my phone and smiled. Phase 2 activated. One by one, phones around the room started pinging. I watched as faces changed. Confusion, shock, horror. Whispers spread. People began exchanging glances, scrolling through their screens, their expressions darkening. And then the first gasps. I turned just in time to see Farah's sister grab her arm, holding up her phone. Farah, she hissed, her voice sharp with panic. What is this? Farah snatched the phone, her face shifting from annoyance to confusion to sheer panic, because there it was. The emails, the offshore account statements, the fraudulent loan applications, leaked to everyone. Amir's father, a man who had always blindly defended his wife, stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled over. His voice, usually calm, boomed through the hall. Farah, explain this now. Silence fell. Absolute. Deafening silence. I tilted my head, watching her struggle, watching her perfect world crumble. She opened her mouth. No words came out. Amir, finally catching up to what was happening, grabbed his phone, his face draining of color, his reputation, his business, his mother, all of it, imploding. And I just stood there, watching, enjoying, memorizing every second of her downfall. Farah's hands shook as she turned to me, eyes blazing. Pure fury, pure desperation. You, she seethed, stepping forward. You did this. I took my time, lifted my drink, took a slow sip, then I smiled. Oh, Farah, I sighed, feigning innocence. You did this to yourself. And with that, I turned, walking away from the wreckage I had created. Farah had spent years thinking she was untouchable. She thought she had destroyed me. She thought she had won. But now she knew exactly what it felt like to lose. Farah thought she had survived the storm, even after her precious engagement party had descended into chaos. Even after the whispers and accusations began spreading like wildfire, she still believed she could claw her way back. She was scrambling, of course. I had expected that. Damage control was her specialty. She had spent years twisting reality, gaslighting, manipulating her way out of every scandal, every rumor. She wasn't going to go down easily. But what she didn't realize, what she was too arrogant to understand, was that this time she wasn't facing a rumor, she was facing me. And I wasn't just going to take her down, I was going to make sure she never got back up again. The morning after the engagement party, Farah did what she always did. She played the victim. I watched, amused, as she rushed to control the fallout, calling relatives, crying on the phone about how she had been targeted by jealous, spiteful people. She blamed me, of course, but she knew she had no proof. She still thought she had power. She still believed that her family, her name, her influence could shield her from the consequences of her actions. She was wrong. Because while she was busy spinning her sob story, trying to mend her shattered reputation, she had no idea what was coming next. I had no intention of letting Amir walk away unscathed. Did he physically throw me out of our marriage? No. But he had stood there silently, spinelessly, while his mother ripped my life apart. He had let her steal from me, erase me, replace me, so I made sure that when his downfall came, it was just as ruthless. It started with an email, one single, well-documented email, sent directly to his company's board of directors. Attached? A folder of evidence detailing Amir's hidden financial transactions, payments made under the table, forged signatures, proof of embezzlement that I knew his company wouldn't ignore. I had sat beside him for years, listening as he bragged about how he moved company money around to avoid audits, how his mother taught him to use the system to his advantage. I knew everything, and now so did his employer. By lunchtime, he had been summoned to an emergency meeting. By dinner, he was suspended. By the next morning, he was officially fired. I didn't need to be there to see his reaction, but I knew the exact moment he realized what I had done, because my phone buzzed with a call from him. I let it ring. I let him stew in it, then I blocked his number, let him feel the silence, let him sit in the ruins of his own making. Farah had spent years hiding her skeletons, pretending to be an upstanding matriarch while she laundered money, falsified tax documents, and manipulated her way into controlling every financial aspect of her family. I made sure those skeletons came crawling out for everyone to see. One by one, the tips I had anonymously submitted to authorities, to banks, to journalists started hitting their targets. A flagged transaction in her offshore account? Frozen. A routine tax audit on her business? Escalated. Loan fraud? Investigated. Within a week, Farah was drowning in legal trouble. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, relatives, former friends, desperate financial advisors, all calling, all panicked, because now she wasn't just a manipulative mother-in-law, she was a criminal. Farah thrived on her social status, her reputation. It was her armor, her currency, her weapon. So I made sure she lost it. It started small, social media whispers, leaked screenshots, anonymous posts about her financial scandals. Then came the articles, small blogs at first, then bigger ones, all reporting on the fall of a respected businesswoman. But the real destruction, that happened in her own community. I had spent years being treated like an outsider, an intruder in her carefully curated circle of influence. I had smiled through the passive-aggressive comments, endured the whispers behind my back, but now they whispered about her. Now they were the ones turning their backs on her. I heard it from an old friend, how Farah had shown up to a gathering only to be met with cold stares and forced pleasantries, how the same women who once clung to her every word were now barely acknowledging her. She was toxic now, untouchable, radioactive, and it was delicious. Farah still had one last thing. Her home, the house she ruled over like a queen, the house where she had plotted my destruction, thrown me away like garbage, replaced me like I was nothing. I made sure she lost that too, because when Amir was fired, when her business accounts were frozen, when the lawsuits started piling up, who was left to pay the mortgage? No one. And Farah had never learned how to survive without power. She had never learned how to beg, so when the bank came calling, when the foreclosure notices arrived, when she realized she had no one left to manipulate, no one left to save her, she crumbled. And for the first time, she was the one with nowhere to go. I heard from a mutual acquaintance how she had been forced to move in with distant relatives, humiliated, powerless, treated like a burden instead of a queen. I imagined her sitting in a tiny guest room, hearing whispers outside the door. I imagined her realizing that she had become exactly what she had feared most, insignificant, and I smiled. I never saw her again, not in person at least, but one day a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address, no signature, just 3 words, scrawled in shaky handwriting. I was wrong. I stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, deliberately, I tore it in half. Farah had spent years trying to destroy me. Now she was the one left in ruins. And I had never felt more alive. I thought revenge would feel like a sharp, fleeting rush, the kind that burns hot and disappears, leaving behind nothing but ashes. But it didn't. It felt slow, intoxicating, permanent, like sinking into a warm bath after a long day, like exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It felt right. Farah was gone. A name that once commanded fear, now whispered through tight-lipped gossips, nothing more than a cautionary tale. A queen stripped of her throne, exiled, forgotten. Amir, pathetic, unemployed, abandoned, a man who had everything and lost it all. I heard rumors of his desperation, of job applications ignored, of a dwindling bank account, of a fiancé who had suddenly lost interest. His mother had destroyed his life to replace me with someone better, and yet here he was, alone. And me, I was reborn. It took time, I won't lie about that. Even after I burned them to the ground, I still had to claw my way back. Farah had stolen more than money. She had tried to steal my identity, my independence, my confidence. And for a while, she had almost succeeded, but almost wasn't enough. Piece by piece, I rebuilt myself. Not into the woman I was before. No, that version of me had been too soft, too trusting, too willing to bend. This version, unshakable. The first thing I did was leave. I packed my things, got on a plane, and put as much distance between me and that toxic history as I could. A new city, a new job, a new life. The first few months were hard, rebuilding always is, but I had already walked through fire. There was nothing left that could burn me. Months passed, then a year. Life felt lighter. I had a new routine, new friends, a sense of peace that once felt impossible, and then one morning, I woke up to a familiar name blinking across my phone screen. Amir! I stared at it. Then I laughed. I let it ring and ring, knowing he was on the other side, waiting, hoping, blocked. Later that evening, I found myself at a rooftop bar, sipping a cocktail, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The city stretched before me, a skyline full of promise, a future untouched by the past. I had won, but more importantly, I had moved on. I don't know what happened to her, not exactly, but I heard whispers, stories passed through mutual connections, spoken in hushed, scandalized tones, how she bounced from one distant relative's home to another, unwelcome everywhere she went. How she tried to rebuild, to regain power, to crawl back up the social ladder, only to find every door slammed in her face. How she ended up in a cramped apartment alone, stripped of luxury, stripped of the influence she had once wielded like a sword. How poetic. The woman who once dictated the rules, who decided who was worthy and who was not, now reduced to nothing. Did I feel sorry for her? Not even a little. She had built an empire on control, on cruelty, on stepping over people like they were beneath her, and now she had no one left to step on. Revenge was never just about getting even. It was about taking back what was stolen. My voice, my power, my sense of self. Farah thought she could erase me. She was wrong. I didn't just survive, I thrived. One evening I received a letter. The handwriting was shaky, almost desperate. 3 words. I was wrong. I stared at it for a long time. Then, without hesitation, I tore it in half. She wanted forgiveness. She wanted absolution. She wasn't going to get it. Farah had spent years believing she was untouchable. Now she was nothing. And me? I had never felt lighter. The past was gone. The future was mine. And I was finally free. But tell me, was I right? Some say revenge is a waste of energy, that the best way to move on is to forgive and forget. But can you really forgive someone who tried to erase you? Was justice served? Or should I have taken an even darker path? What would you have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear every single one.